If you've been told your breakfast is diabetes friendly just because it doesn't spike your blood sugar, this is the video you need to watch. Most people with type 2 diabetes are taught to judge breakfast by one question: did this meal spike my blood sugar? And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. You eat, you check your glucose, the number barely moves, you think, great, that was a diabetes friendly meal. So you keep eating eggs, bacon, cheese, buttered coffee, keto granola, almond flour pancakes, or a low carb protein bar. Your CGM gives you a nice flat line. For a moment, you feel like you finally cracked the code. But here's the part no one tells you. A flat blood sugar line after a high-fat, low-carb breakfast does not mean that breakfast is improving your diabetes. It simply means you didn't eat many carbohydrates. And those are not the same thing. The real goal isn't to avoid blood sugar movement for the rest of your life. The real goal is to restore your body's ability to move glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells efficiently. That's called insulin sensitivity. If your diabetes-friendly breakfast keeps blood sugar flat by stripping out carbohydrates and loading up on fat, it may be helping you hide the symptom while reinforcing the underlying problem. I know that sounds backwards. You've probably heard for years that carbohydrates are the enemy. Oatmeal is dangerous. Fruit is dangerous. Potatoes, beans, whole grains, all dangerous. And when blood sugar rises after eating those foods, it feels like proof. But that's like blaming the smoke alarm for the fire. When glucose rises after you eat whole food carbohydrates, it's not proof that carbohydrates caused the disease. It's evidence that your body has lost some of its ability to process glucose efficiently. The problem isn't that glucose exists. The problem is that your muscle and liver cells have become resistant to insulin's signal. If you want our free guide that breaks down exactly what's keeping your blood sugar high and what to do about it, comment guide below and we'll send it to you. Let's get into how to fix this issue. Think of insulin like a key. Its job is to unlock the door so glucose can move from your bloodstream into your cells, especially your muscle cells, which are the largest glucose storage site in your body. They're supposed to act like a massive glucose sponge, but when excess fat accumulates inside muscle and liver cells, the lock gets sticky. The key still exists. Your pancreas may even be producing more of it, but the signal doesn't work the way it should. Glucose stays in the bloodstream longer than it should. That's insulin resistance. And this is why a breakfast can look perfect on a glucose monitor and still be moving your metabolism in the wrong direction. If a meal contains very little carbohydrate, there's very little glucose entering the bloodstream. Of course, your blood sugar looks calm, but think about what that actually means. Your body never had to respond to glucose in the first place. It's like acing a test you were never given. You didn't demonstrate insulin sensitivity. You just didn't show up to the exam. That doesn't tell you whether your muscle cells are becoming more responsive to insulin. It only tells you that you avoided the glucose challenge entirely. Many people with type 2 diabetes aren't improving their carbohydrate tolerance. They're avoiding carbohydrates and calling that reversal. But if you want true reversal, the question isn't how do I keep glucose flat by eating less glucose? The question is how do I restore my body's ability to handle glucose again? That's a completely different goal. And breakfast is where this misunderstanding does the most damage because it's the meal where people with diabetes are most often encouraged to eat the most fat and the fewest carbohydrates. Eggs instead of oatmeal, bacon instead of beans, cream instead of fruit, butter instead of whole grains. The glucose number after that meal may look better in the short term, but blood glucose is only one window into metabolism. As a matter of fact, in 2024, researchers published a systematic review and meta-analysis in the Journal of Nutrition examining what high-fat diets do to intramyocellular lipid, fat stored inside muscle cells. The researchers included 19 studies in which healthy adults consumed a high-fat diet, more than 35% of daily calories coming from fat, for at least 3 days. The findings were significant. High-fat diets increased fat storage inside muscle cells. And when researchers measured insulin sensitivity using a clamp test, one of the most rigorous tools available, they found that insulin sensitivity significantly decreased after high-fat feeding. Pause on that. These were healthy adults, not people with type 2 diabetes. And still, after just a few days of high-fat eating, researchers could measure more fat inside muscle cells and lower insulin sensitivity. Now, to be precise, the study also noted that the increase in intramyocellular lipid didn't fully explain the drop in insulin sensitivity, so we shouldn't oversimplify. The body is more complex than that. Athletes, for example, can store more fat inside muscle and remain highly insulin sensitive because their muscles are metabolically active, constantly churning over fuel. But for the average person with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes who isn't highly trained, this matters enormously. When excess fatty acids accumulate inside cells, they can disrupt the insulin signaling pathway. Insulin knocks, but the message doesn't travel properly. Glucose transporters don't respond. Glucose stays in the bloodstream. That's the physiology hiding behind the phrase, "my blood sugar spiked." Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine your kitchen sink is clogged. Water drains slowly. Every time you turn on the faucet, the sink fills up. One solution? Never turn on the faucet. Technically, it works. No water comes in, so the sink doesn't overflow. But the clog is still there. The goal shouldn't be to avoid opening the faucet forever. The goal should be to clear the drain. In your body, eating carbohydrates is what turns on the faucet. Glucose flows in and needs somewhere to go. The drain is insulin sensitivity, your body's ability to move that glucose into your cells. And the clog is largely excess fat interfering with that process in your muscle and liver cells. So when someone says, "my blood sugar stays flat when I eat bacon and eggs, but spikes when I eat oatmeal and berries," that doesn't prove bacon and eggs are healing the metabolism. It proves the body currently struggles to process carbohydrates. That struggle is called carbohydrate intolerance. And carbohydrate intolerance isn't caused by eating a banana. It's caused by insulin resistance. If this is starting to click and you want the full breakdown of how to reverse it, comment guide below. We'll send you our free guide to the Mastering Diabetes method. Now, let's take a look at the difference between the snapshot and the full movie. Hear me out. A CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, gives you a snapshot, but reversal of the disease requires understanding the movie. When someone eats a high-fat, low-carb breakfast and sees a flat glucose line, they may feel successful. But what happened to free fatty acids? What happened to insulin signaling? What happened to the liver's glucose output overnight? What happened to muscle glucose uptake later in the day, over 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months? Those are the questions that matter if reversal is the goal. This is why many people report, "I went low carb and my numbers improved at first, but then my fasting glucose started creeping up again." Or, "the moment I eat fruit or beans, my blood sugar goes crazy." That's not freedom. That's a narrower and narrower cage. True metabolic freedom is when your body can handle whole food carbohydrates again because insulin sensitivity has been restored. This is the metabolic freedom we have helped thousands restore. So what actually moves the needle to reverse insulin resistance? Let's talk about that. A low-fat, plant-based, whole food dietary pattern rich in fiber, legumes, intact whole grains, fruit, starchy vegetables isn't powerful because it magically hides glucose. It's powerful because it addresses the environment inside the cell. It reduces excess dietary fat, it lowers saturated fat exposure, it increases fiber, it feeds the gut microbiome, it supports short-chain fatty acid production, and over time, it helps muscle and liver become more responsive to insulin. That is the goal. Not a flat line because you avoided carbs, but a more capable metabolism because you restored insulin sensitivity. A breakfast can be diabetes-friendly for the meter and unfriendly for the mitochondria. Friendly to today's glucose number, unfriendly to tomorrow's carbohydrate tolerance. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. The most dangerous diabetes advice isn't always the advice that looks obviously extreme. Sometimes it's the advice that looks successful because the meter looks good, while the metabolism quietly continues to decline. Your meter can't show you intramyocellular lipid. It can't show you hepatic insulin resistance. It can't show you whether your muscle cells are becoming more responsive to insulin over months. It shows you glucose. That's useful, but it's incomplete. And if you use an incomplete measurement to define the entire strategy, you may end up winning the morning and losing the metabolism. So the next time someone tells you a breakfast is diabetes friendly because it doesn't spike blood sugar, pause. Ask a deeper question. Does this breakfast help restore insulin sensitivity? Does it support the muscle becoming a better glucose sink? Does it reduce the fatty acid burden that interferes with insulin signaling? Does it move me toward carbohydrate tolerance? Or does it simply keep glucose low because there was very little glucose to handle? Type 2 diabetes reversal is not about becoming better at avoiding carbohydrates. It's about becoming better at using them. And once you understand understand that breakfast stops being a test you're trying to pass every morning. It becomes a window into the deeper physiology of insulin resistance and a real opportunity to start reversing it. If you want our free guide to the Mastering Diabetes Method, comment guide below, because you don't need another list of foods to fear. You need to understand why your body got stuck, what insulin resistance really is, and what it takes to restore carbohydrate tolerance again. Until next time, keep those carbs high and that A1C low.